let's see. Now, as I said, we only have the option of motion JPEG, not MPEG-4, not H.264, or MPEG-2 like some cameras support. That means we're going to get a lower frame rate, but there won't be macro blocking or anything else. I'm actually a fan of motion JPEG. There is, of course, the issue of storing it, which we'll get into later, but if you're not actually planning on saving a whole lot of video, JPEG should work just fine, and it's compatible with almost everything. The maximum resolution here on this device is 640 by 480, which is 4CIF. It's your standard VGA. Let's see here. FPS. Now, FPS is actually going to be limited at 20 frames per second, which is still pretty decent, but perhaps not as good as some would hope. Let's go ahead and use high quality video since we have good quality internet. And let's put our default view mode as Java. Let's go ahead and save those settings. Now, the camera, of course, has a built-in microphone to listen to sound. A lot of people on the internet have complained that the audio is crackly, staticky, etc. From what I've been able to gather, it appears that the default setting of 80 is actually a little too hot for this mic, and so we're going to try setting this down to 50 in the hopes that it's a little bit more appropriate. Now, one thing this camera does do is it does have basic motion detection. We'll look at this a little bit later, but it looks to be based on zones. So, for example, if we only were interested in the refrigerator door opening, we would block out we would monitor the area around the refrigerator. So we would click on those blocks. We'll look at that a little bit more, but I find that to be an interesting screen. One thing that this camera can do is push email notifications. We'll try this out later, but if it sees something interesting, it'll send you an email. FTP, now this is just an FTP client, I believe, so it's uploading to FTP. That's a pretty basic functionality. Cameras have had this forever. And of course you shouldn't expect to be able to download from it because it doesn't have any real built-in storage. Let's see, time and date. You're obviously going to want to make sure that your time is correct. So I would recommend using an NTP server. Auto day-night mode turns on the IR based on the amount of brightness in the room. You can also turn that on as a schedule or force it always into day mode or always into night mode. Now, I personally prefer using a static IP address. The reason for that being you don't have to go hunting for it on the network. One thing you're absolutely going to want to do after you've made sure the camera is working and all the connections are set up is after you've made sure that wireless networking has been configured correctly in that configuration screen, you're going to want to remove the wired connection here because otherwise it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to mount. With wireless, it will function just with this power connector again. You can see here that it's working on wireless, that I'm able to twist it around. When we get it mounted, we'll be able to swivel it here on this joint. With regard to the always pleasant task of mounting it, there is one minor complaint I do have about this, and that is that as far as I can tell, the device doesn't contain a template, so that you could mark it here on the wall, exactly the spacing between your screws, but that's a minor complaint. Basically, in terms of hanging this, you just need to use some common sense. You're going to want to put this in a place where it's actually useful. So we're going to put this up here on the wall. on a corner where we can point it, and I'll show you later, at the front door. Given that, as I said, it doesn't contain a template, you're going to want to roughly mark on the wall approximately where those brackets are, and then we will go ahead square those up. Of course, it doesn't have to be perfectly level, although for aesthetics purposes, you're probably going to want it fairly level. Now, as I said, this isn't a particularly heavy device, so you don't really need to use the anchors that are included, but those are there in the event that you want to use them. And these are sort of the dual screws that'll work with both a standard or a Phillips head, but these are pretty easy screws to get in, and of course will be pretty easy to get out when we have to move out of this apartment. You're going to want to screw these in. Not all of the way, obviously, because you're going to want to have it there on those brackets, but at the same time, you're going to want to get it in most of the way. Probably about like so. Probably a little farther than that. And then, same thing with the other one. Okay, there we go. Now, we just need to point this in the general direction. Tighten up the collar a little bit. And then, of course, get our power supply. After the unit has powered back up, now after our unit has powered back up, we're going to want to log in and check to see if the device is online. This may take a few minutes to synchronize. Okay, the ultimate source of the problem ended up being that I didn't put in a gateway and DNS for the internet connection. Now that we have the camera basically mounted, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the more advanced features of this camera. Now, one thing that I've set up is email based on motion detection, and to do that, first you're going to need to specify an SMTP server. That's the kind of mail server that you have that sends outbound mail. For this example, I've gone ahead and put in the Google SMTP server information. I've also set it up so that it will send on motion detection, and then I've set up motion detection so that it will send an email when you have activity in this block, which should be triggered when the door is opened. So, just to test this out, let me go in and out of the door. Now we're going to check our email. You can see here that the video that was recorded when I walked out the door has been delivered. And it's set up in 6-frame motion. Now granted, because the door's a little bit farther away, it's a little hard to make me out, but it's still clear enough to be useful. One thing about this camera is it does have a fixed focus, so it's not going to have an adjustable focus that some cameras would have. And here's the video, of course, of me coming in the door and my lovely mug busted. And one of the features that people will be buying this product for is the My D-Link Lite application that runs on iPad, iPhone, and on Android. This is an Android. This is the Galaxy S3. Of course, it's available in the Google Play Store. That's where you would get it from. I haven't checked the Amazon store. It may be there as well. Once you open up the app, it prompts you for log-on information, as you can see. And that, of course, is the same log-on information that you used to set up the camera earlier with the My D-Link cloud service. So let's see, jim.dallas@gmail.com, and once you enter your username and password, you will go ahead and hit this sign in button here. It'll spin for a moment. I know it's rather difficult to see. And then once it's finished spinning, your device will show up there in the list, and you will click that, and you can see the video coming in and the audio coming in from behind me. Before I finish up, a few loose ends. If you go to the setup program again, you can see that there are some links here to help you troubleshoot, get support, print out the manual. There's also this link here for the DViewCam software. And this is a software that you can use to actually record video for the long haul. And DCamView, or ViewCam, is pretty sophisticated. It's on par, certainly, with some of the enterprise software I've seen. I'm not going to go into all the details, but this is, again, the software that would allow you to set up a scheduled recording. So if you wanted to be recording it 24/7, you could have it set up like this. So to go ahead and wrap up my review video, this is a good but not great camera. There are some things that are missing that you might see in a better model. For example, a selection of formats like MPEG-4, an adjustable lens would be nice. Obviously, higher resolution. If you're prepared to spend a lot more money, you can get a much better image out of a camera than you can with this. There are some, of course, things that are a little confusing. There is an online manual, but not a printed one, which I haven't read yet in its entirety. I was able to figure out most of the prompts fairly reasonably. For a somewhat less technical person, though, I could see them getting confused, and I think if you read the reviews online of this camera, you'll see that that's not an uncommon occurrence, people getting confused by the setup screen. Overall, I think this camera does what it advertises to do, with the possible exception of having an easy setup. It's a quick setup if you know what you're doing, but a potentially confusing one in some areas. I would say it's worth the money. There may be cameras that are a better value out there, though. Certainly cameras that are worse. As I started, I think this is a camera that's representative of the consumer market that's out there at the end of 2012, and would probably be a good start for someone who's interested in this, although I wouldn't necessarily finish your market research there. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it's been educational, and I hope you have a happy holidays.